Hi everybody. This here is a short little video that gives an overview of how to conduct Heritage Fair research and extend further on your topic. In this video, we'll discuss what concepts to include in your research, how to identify which sources are more helpful, and more. Let's begin, shall we?
One of the first things you will want to do after creating an inquiry question is figuring out what sources you need. There are two main types of sources: primary sources and secondary sources. Both are very useful for different reasons. Primary sources are documents or depositories of information created during the time period that you are studying. These include diaries, journals, and eyewitness accounts. For instance, let's say you are working on a project about the Vietnam War and wanted to look into the sentiments felt by American soldiers who were participating in the conflict. You will need to find primary sources such as collections of diaries and journals and consider all possible viewpoints. Example, how a conscripted soldier may have different opinions than one who had signed up voluntarily. Secondary sources can communicate more comprehensive insight and context than primary sources alone, as they are typically written after the event in question, with the benefit of reflection, hindsight, and broad analysis. For example, you could consult a book or documentary from the present day which examines the Vietnam War. It may use primary source evidence from the war, and will also help add depth and background from analysis carried out after the event.
With secondary sources, you need to consider multiple subjects when evaluating its credibility and usefulness. One major aspect of source evaluation is consideration of who produced it and when. Authors who hold biased beliefs can give an incomplete or distorted view of the event. The time period the source is created in can also play a major role. An older source may be outdated in some areas, whereas with modern sources you may have to investigate its origin further, especially if it's online/electronic. Another big thing to bear in mind is whether or not the information it contains is accurate. This is particularly important if the event being described is debatable in nature, such as a legend or folktale. There may be numerous viewpoints you should consider, and the best way to do this is to use multiple sources. The final aspect you should make sure to think about is how it is relevant to your topic and what its audience is. How might an author adjust their descriptions to be better suited for a certain group? How might this interfere with your research? And so on.
When beginning your research, something you might want to do first is create research questions. These are a bit like mini inquiry questions, but instead of focusing on the entire event, it focuses on one of its aspects, such as the people involved or its specific effects. These questions should help guide you through your research. They should focus on an aspect of your topic that you want to explore more, which isn't explicitly covered by the inquiry question. These can also be very helpful if you incorporate historical thinking into them, which we'll dive into right now. It's worth noting, however, that research questions don't always have to be historical thinking centric. In some cases, they can be used for non-historical thinking aspects as long as it remains relevant to the subject of the Heritage Fair. With that said,
historical thinking is what differentiates between simply doing research and extending further with your inquiry question. But what is historical thinking and why should we make sure it is present in our research? The 6 historical thinking concepts is arguably the best definition of what historical thinking is. In a nutshell, the 6 historical thinking concepts center around what the event changed, its impact, and what the people who were there at the time thought of it. These concepts are not in any particular order, but it is nonetheless extremely important that you use these all together with one another. The 6 historical thinking concepts are as follows: historical significance, which assesses the impacts the event had; cause and consequence, which looks into what factors were present and what the aftermath was; primary source evidence, which is part of understanding what people at the time thought; continuity and change, which examines what was altered or interrupted by the event; historical perspectives, which involves comprehending an event from the viewpoint of those who lived during its period; and the ethical dimension, which evaluates what we can take away from it. These essential concepts are the pillars of historical thinking, and as you can see, this is a lot to consider during research. This is why research questions can be very helpful when investigating your topic using these concepts, as can your choice of sources to use.
Sometimes when diving into your research, you need to reach out to people and experts. This is where interviews can come in handy. To summarize, you need to head into the interview with a clear purpose that is reflected by the questions you have devised. This is achieved by coming up with open-ended questions. Let's say you were studying the history behind rural agricultural practices in British Columbia and interviewing an elderly farmer. Instead of asking close-ended questions such as, "Did your parents employ you to carry on agricultural traditions?" you can inquire, "Tell me about the agricultural traditions you learned during your childhood." This open-ended question is less pointed and will result in the interviewee giving a more detailed response. Open-ended questions allow the interviewee to fully express themselves, whereas closed-ended questions confine them to simple answers that will hamper your ability to procure information from them.
Throughout your research, you should remember to keep track of the sources you used. The best way to do this is with MLA citations. MLA is a format used to indicate what sources were utilized and is common in language arts, history, and other major areas of study. There are two main types of MLA citations: in-text citations and in a work cited. Details are present in the slide's pictures. Please pause now if you'd like to take a closer look.
After you've concluded your research and perhaps found an answer for your inquiry question, you would move on to presenting and showing what you've learned. But after that, what do you do with your knowledge? You shouldn't just leave your heritage fair as is, you should keep going. For instance, you could continue your learning by considering more aspects of your topic. One way to do this is by assessing the impact of your topic based on impact calculus, which is judging an event's impact based on its magnitude, how many people were affected, time frame, when the event has or will occur, and probability, how likely some aspects of the event were. You can use these to gauge the importance of certain events. Make sure to warrant or provide evidence to back up your claims, though. In the end, impact calculus comes down to the question, why should I care about this? If we can explain that question, it can help us understand why other people should care about what we're saying, and that makes for both a more persuasive and thorough conclusion. By linking these together with other historical thinking subjects, especially the 6 historical thinking concepts, you can learn more about your topic and see what effects it has on today. Remember to also keep asking questions about your topic. Think about what we can take away from it today and how relevant it is. What are some links you can see that you can look into more, and so on.
To summarize what we have been discussing throughout this video, the main things you should bear in mind regarding your topic during research are what sources you'll be using, how to make use of the 6 historical thinking concepts, and how to dive deeper by using research questions and conducting interviews. But in the end, something we really want to emphasize is how you proceed following your heritage fair. Don't simply leave your topic as is after you've concluded your fair. Try to find out how to extend further and apply your learning to the world. In doing this, you're truly learning and understanding our fascinating, diverse, and intricate history. Thank you for watching.